Do you recall the time the sitcom magic did not require CGI, a puff of smoke, a blink, and a genie who addressed an astronaut as master? It was the 1965 NBC comedy that was I Dream of Jeannie, which featured Barbara Eden as Jeannie, Larry Hagman as the high-strung astronaut Major Tony Nelson, Bill Daly as the loyal friend Roger Healey, and Hayden Rourke as the ever-suspicious Dr. Bellows. The show lasted 5 seasons, 139 episodes, blending fantasy, slapstick, and a lot of romantic tension as Tony attempted and most often failed to keep the powers of Jeannie a secret. We know you must have heard the old trite now. You have heard of the outlawed belly buttons, the Jim Beam whiskey decanter that served as the bottle, the forcible marriage that had spoilt the show, and that notorious Dallas reunion. However, this time around, we are tossing the previous playbook. We went deep into Hollywood archives to present you with a full-length, deep-dive script with 15 totally new, wildly obscure, and fascinating facts about I Dream of Jeannie that you did not know. And in accordance with popular demand, we are adding it to the list at number 1 up to 15. Until we pop the cork on this bottle, give that like button a tap, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you will not miss a single one of our deep dives into retro TV. Get comfortable, have a snack, and we are going to count down. Number 1, the no Twitch rule. The competition between I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched of ABC was Hollywood legend in the 1960s. The only thing that made it so awkward was that the same studio, Screen Gems, made both shows. Since Bewitched was the first, its lead actress Elizabeth Montgomery had a virtual trademark on the nose twitch. The studio executives were so horrified of brand confusion that creator Sidney Sheldon issued a strict, never-to-be-broken rule to Barbara Eden and all the directors. Jeannie could not, under no circumstances, twitch her nose or wrinkle her face to perform magic. Eden was to come up with her own magic act. She had practiced before a mirror day. She attempted to wave her hands, snap her fingers, and wiggle her ears. She finally decided to fold her arms and a sharp, distinct nod of the head with a dramatic blink. It was her trademark, but the filmmakers were so paranoid of the Bewitched comparisons that when Eden even sneezed or wrinkled her nose in the presence of a magic trick, the directors would scream "cut." Scrap the film and repeat the take.
Number 2, Sidney Sheldon tried to buy color out of his own pocket.
One can hardly imagine the pink and burgundy harem costume Jeannie wore in anything but glorious Technicolor. However, in season 1, you will recall, it was shot in black and white.
Timur!
Yeah, that was a Samuro.
Color television was now the standard, and NBC executives were known to be tight-fisted in 1965. They were watching the pilot, a guy finds a magical lady in a bottle on a beach, and believed that the show would not last longer than 13 weeks. Since they had no faith in the success of the show, NBC did not want to spend the additional $400 per episode that it would cost to shoot in color. Sidney Sheldon was outraged. He was aware that magic smoke and visual effects were much more effective in color.
Thank you. What'd you say, Roger? I said you went out and bought the boat without me. Why don't you wait?
He was in such a frenzy to salvage the aesthetic of his show that he took out his own checkbook and offered to cover the difference of $400 per episode out of his own pocket. Screen Gems executives grabbed him and persuaded him against it, saying that he was wasting his money. Ironically, the show was an instant smash hit, and NBC was forced to embarrassingly admit they were wrong and gladly picked up the bill to switch to color in season 2. Number 3, the ugliness of the classical ponytail. One of the most iconic hairstyles in television history is the enormous, sweeping blonde ponytail of Jeannie. However, it was a nightmare to Barbara Eden to have that appearance every day. First of all, that was not all her real hair. The hair and makeup department would have to make a heavy 4-ounce hairpiece, called a fall, to achieve the incredible volume.
That is what Earless said before he became earless.
Height and swooping bounce of the so-called Jeannie look. This lump of hair must have been forcefully clamped into the real head of Eden each morning, and it took hours. Worse still, the hairpiece was so cumbersome and had to be pinned so hard to keep it in place when Eden was doing her physical comedy that it caused her to have severe and throbbing tension headaches nearly every day of the production. And God forbid that they filmed an outdoor scene. With the heavy hairpiece, it served as a windsail and would forcibly pull her head backwards in case a strong wind passed through the Burbank backlot. Number 4, secret struggle on set by Bill Daly. And had you loved Major Roger Healey, the girl-crazed, easily confused best friend of Tony Nelson, you loved Bill Daly. His physical comedy was pure gold, and his comic timing was perfect. What the audience did not realize, however, was that Bill Daly was actually struggling with a huge, invisible impediment on the set. He was extremely dyslexic, and all but blind without his thick glasses. Daly could not wear the thick spectacles that Roger Healey used, as the producers thought he could not do it on camera because he was an active military man. He would not be able to read the cue cards in the background without them, and his extreme dyslexia could hardly read and memorize scripts at home. He was always afraid that he would be fired because he would flub his lines, but how then did he survive 5 seasons? Larry Hagman. Hagman loved Bill Daly.
That's all set. Roger's gonna pick her.
Watch out! Whee!
Although he was known to be a mess with producers, Hagman would also secretly draw Daly aside and drill him verbally on and off between takes, to get him to remember the rhythm of the scenes by heart. Hagman later that day was credited with saving his career single-handedly. Number 5. NASA Cold Shoulder. The space agency would have been delighted with the free primetime publicity, but NASA was actually very unfriendly to the production initially. In the mid-1960s, the space race was deadly serious business. NASA was worried that the presence of an astronaut who was linked to magic, superstition, and a skimpily dressed roommate would reduce the Apollo missions to a joke to the American people. They were on the offensive against the show with official NASA insignias and at first denied permission to film at their real facilities. At some point, the Air Force intervened and toned down the attitude when they noticed that the show was portraying astronauts as all-American heroes who were serious and hardworking. Nevertheless, the military continued to pay a very close attention to the scripts. They even dispatched military liaisons to the set to make sure that Major Nelson was in every way up to code in his uniform, and that his conduct at the base was always most professional, regardless of the wizard mayhem that was occurring at home. Number 6. The 2,000-year-old language was real. In the early episodes of Season 1, when Jeannie is fresh out of the bottle and trying to communicate with Tony, she speaks her native tongue. The majority of the audience thought it was mere sitcom nonsense improvised, but it wasn't. Barbara Eden even had a linguistics coach to study and use real Persian and Farsi pronunciation. Add some historical weight and realism to the character. She was required to memorize these foreign phrases phonetically to her scenes. But as the show became less of a relatively realistic romantic fantasy and more of a high-energy slapstick comedy, the producers felt that the barrier of the ancient language was slowing the jokes down. It was gradually faded away, and in its place was perfect English. And her musical chime iconic. Number 7. The Live Lion Incident. The 1960s television was very fast and loose with safety standards. In the first episode of the first season, titled, "Is There an Extra Genie in the House?" the script entailed Jeannie summoning a full-grown and living lion in the middle of the living room of the Nelsons. This would now be done using green screens or CGI. Back then, they simply brought a huge, unchained live lion on the soundstage.
You know, the loveliest boat I ever saw was Cleopatra's barge.
No kidding, really?
Larry Hagman was petrified, all right. It is said that he would not venture anywhere near the beast and was sweating through his uniform. Barbara Eden, however, had no fears whatsoever. After working with wild animals on the set of the film Flaming Star with Elvis Presley, Eden walked up to the apex predator, stroked its mane, and handled it like a giant golden retriever. Hagman was supposedly a combination of enraged and terribly humiliated that his co-star was outmaneuvering him in front of the whole crew. Mid-roll break. Do you like these behind-the-scenes Jeannie stories? Well, assist us to preserve the magic. Click that like button, leave a comment about your favorite episode of Jeannie or Magical Mishap, and send this video to a fellow classic TV fan. Okay, back to the countdown with Number 8, the censors and the opaque pants. Although the no navel rule of the network is a TV legend, there was another absurd wardrobe requirement imposed on the costume department. Since the show involved an unmarried couple cohabiting, this was extremely taboo in the television censoring of 1960s America, when every frame of film was scrutinized. They later realized that there was an issue. The pink harem pants that Jeannie was famous with were made of sheer silk. The censors panicked and were horrified by the possibility that a powerful backlight in the studio could shine through the pants and show the true figure of Barbara Eden legs under the garment. The silhouette of a female leg was considered too scandalous by them to be viewed by the family. As a result, they forced the costume department to sew thick, heavy, opaque linings into all her pants. It not only changed the flow of the costume, but also made the outfit extremely hot and uncomfortable to wear under the hot studio lights. Number 9. Jin Jin the dog was an absolute menace. The 4th season saw the introduction of Jin Jin, a pet dog that is invisible and magical and belongs to Jeannie. On screen, Jin Jin was a cute, shabby little terrier and brought a lot of funny havoc by tearing the uniforms of anyone in military attire.
I doubt it very soon.
I'm afraid it was all my fault.
Off-screen, the worst nightmare of Larry Hagman was Jin Jin. The dog who played Jin Jin was a Hollywood rescue.
I'll take care of it. You mind?
Tolerated Barbara Eden, but appeared to have a real reason to hate the guts of Larry Hagman. Hagman even had to stuff his pockets with meat and treats whenever he needed to do a scene with the dog, as he had to bribe the terrier not to bite his ankles. Hagman has legends of making attempts to deliver his lines, backing away nervously at the growling little dog.
Give me that. Give me that.
Hagman later insisted on his scenes with Jin Jin being reduced to bare minimum. Number 10. The secret of the Inside the Bottle set. The most interesting visuals of the show were when the camera was used to show Jeannie relaxing in a luxurious way in her bottle. Most of the viewers thought that this was done by taking a normal shot of Eden.
Now, and I'm going to deliver them to Mrs. Bell, huh?
And overlaying her in a glass bottle shot. It was actually a huge, extremely costly working set. The art department created a full-size, life-size recreation of the inside of the bottle in a special soundstage. They used forced perspective and exaggerated props to make it appear that Jeannie was small. The cushy velvet pillows on which she was reclining were in fact enormous, specially designed cushions bigger than twin beds. The velvet walls were rounded to an ideal shape to replicate the inside of the glass, and the crew had to ensure that it was lit up at the top and then downwards to replicate the light. Passes through the neck of the bottle. It was a wonder of set design in the 1960s. Number 11. Bizarre Sitcom Cameo by Phil Spector. It was not unusual in the 1960s to have popular musicians appearing as guest stars on sitcoms, but I Dream of Jeannie succeeded in getting one of the most unusual guest stars in the history of television. Legendary, and later highly notorious, music producer Phil Spector. In the season 3 episode Jeannie, the Hip Hippie, Jeannie tries to help Tony by forming a rock band. The producers had to find someone who would be tough and unimpressed as a music executive, and somehow they persuaded Phil Spector to act as himself. The strangest thing about it is that Spector was a notorious hater of acting and detested being photographed. In the shoot, Spector was so much taunting the script off camera as he found the hip hippie dialogue so uncool and cheesy.
Where are we?
I don't feel so good.
You will.
But his straight, absolutely unimpressed act is the right one to play off against the effusive, gushy Barbara Eden. Number 12. Sammy Davis Jr. geeked out on set. Although Phil Spector was an unwilling guest star, entertainment legend Sammy Davis Jr. all but insisted to his agent to get him on the show. Sammy was a huge fan of I Dream of Jeannie, and particularly a huge crush on Barbara Eden. His wish came true in season 2, as he appeared as a guest star in an episode where he appeared as himself and as his own magical twin. The cast and crew said that Sammy was a kid in a candy store. He was so thrilled to be hanging on the Columbia Ranch backlot.
And George, I know it took a long time, but you see, practice makes perfect.
That he would not go back to his trailer between takes. Rather, he continued to entertain the crew, sing, tap dance, and do impressions on the soundstage. He liked the experience to the point that he requested to be given a part of the set as a personal memento when the shooting was completed. Number 13. Anatomy of the Blink sound effect. The folded arm head nod was the magic of Jeannie, and the legendary Boeing chime sound effect.
Nice, you can't file, you can't take dictation, you can't even...
However, it was much more complex than pressing a button on a soundboard to make that sound. It was not a stock sound, but was designed to be used in the show by Foley artists. It is in fact a mixture of a harshly hit vibraphone notes
I love you.
Darling, I can't wait until Sunday.
and a special percussion instrument known as a bell tree, which is played in quick succession. Since the early television audio mixing was done by hand, on film strips, Foley editors needed to sit in a dark room and splice the audio tape of the chime to fall on the exact millisecond Barbara Eden would open her eyes.
Thanks.
Turning to the domestic front, at Cape Kennedy, America's three-man announcement.
They needed to paste the tape twice in case she blinkinged twice. Those Foley artists physically cut and pasted that chime sound effect thousands of times by hand, over 139 episodes. Number 14, real astronauts were mega fans. Although NASA was initially red-taped and feared that the show would be a mockery of the space program.
It's just a field for scientific experiment, and that's all.
Wingate's gonna be a lot of laughs on them.
The real men who were headed to space adored the series. Since the production employed actual aerospace technical advisors to have Dr. Bellows and General Peterson sound authentic, the discussion of orbital mechanics, G-forces, and flight procedures was surprisingly realistic. In a crazy fantasy sitcom, Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin literally bumped into Barbara Eden at a Hollywood party when he came back to Earth after his historic trip to the moon. He even took the time to draw her aside and inform her that I Dream of Jeannie was a huge, much-anticipated watch party among the guys down at Cape Kennedy. They enjoyed the humorous escapism, and they greatly enjoyed the fact that when Major Tony Nelson was on duty, he was always shown as a dedicated, hyper-competent, and brave pilot. Number 15. The show spun off a billion-dollar literary empire. It is possible that the most insane legacy of I Dream of Jeannie has nothing to do with television.
About 7 o'clock.
Oh, I cannot wait. Oh, Master, I will go down there and get into the bottle and wait for you, and you can pick both of us up at the same time.
At the end of season 5, creator Sidney Sheldon was totally and absolutely exhausted. He had personally co-written or written almost every episode of the show. The incessant churning out of 139 episodes of sitcom television had burned him out in Hollywood completely. Sheldon felt that he was over with TV when the show was canceled.
I finished it before I got on the plane. And I called it I Dream of Jeannie. But it was a feature.
He desired an outlet to express his creativity without having to deal with network censors, budget limitations, and actors demanding their lines. He desired absolute power. And so the author of Jeannie, at the age of 52, sat down to a typewriter and wrote a novel entitled The Naked Face. He was followed by such books as The Other Side of Midnight, Bloodline, and Master of the Game. Yes, the man who gave us the fluffy, bubbly sitcom of a genie in a bottle turned to write incredibly dark, steamy, twisting romantic thrillers. Sidney Sheldon would continue to sell more than 300 million books all over the world and became one of the highest-selling fiction authors of all time. The next time you see Jeannie cross her arms and blink, then just keep in mind that puff of pink smoke eventually created a billion-dollar literary business. And there you have it, 15 totally new, deep-cut facts that show that I Dream of Jeannie was as interesting and crazy behind the scenes as it was on our TV screens. What did you find most surprising about these? Have you heard the secret battle of Bill Daly, the fear of the live lion, or the mad turn of the career of Sidney Sheldon? Write in the comments below. And in case you love this long-time travel, then give the video a huge thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you do not miss our next memory lane road trip. That is remember when until next time, when you are reminded that sometimes the greatest TV magic is when the cameras are off.